Hero viability in Overwatch has been a point of contention for a while now, and it isn't made better by the lack of any clear philosophy sides of the development team. All we know is that ideally they'd like to see every hero played about equally as much, but how is hero viability actually affected? Does it solely come down to buffs and nerfs? In today's video, we're gonna try to dive deep into what's important when attempting to make every hero equally viable, and whether it is a realistic approach at all. Should we just go with the flow and play what's good? Or should every choice we make always provide equal opportunities for pure skill to shine? We're going to discuss that and more right after a quick message from today's sponsor. Playvig is an app that offers gamers of all skill levels the opportunity to play for free while winning real prizes. Prior to competing in single-player quests or posting scores to a variety of competitive leaderboards, you're gonna watch a quick ad which directly funds the prizes you can win. You'll earn Vig coins which translate to a $1 value per 1,000 coins earned. Prizes include a variety of in-game items, or you can redeem them for cash via PayPal. You can replay leaderboard quests multiple times, making it perfect for all of you free-to-players out there. So why not earn some money while spending time doing what you were gonna do anyway? The app is currently available on PC and can be used alongside Hearthstone, Rocket League, and Overwatch, with League of Legends, Dota 2, and Counter-Strike Global Offensive coming very soon. Having launched in November, Playvig is still in beta, so be among the first to give it a shot. Check out that demo by following the link in the description below and start earning coins today. So let's get this started. What affects a hero's viability? Naturally, as many of you will likely also point out first, it is the kit that they have available at their disposal. A hero like Soldier 76, for example, works really well because his use case is not limited by the things that he excels at. Running will always be a beneficial ability, and same goes for a fully automatic rifle with a noob tube attachment as well as a healing station. It is obvious that Soldier 76 was designed to be a hero that is overall very versatile, and the fact that he is viable in so many different scenarios is a testament to that. So what makes a hero like Torbjorn less viable than Soldier? The obvious answer would again be his kit. It's just too situational. Having a stationary turret that takes time to build up to its full potential just isn't always a good idea. It is too easy to shut it down. But the question we have to ask ourselves here is, when is Torbjorn actually viable? You might say that pairing him up with an Orisa could make him viable, which is a good point, but outside of hero combinations, the maps dictate which heroes are viable more than anything else. Judging heroes by their viability relative to the maps has become second nature for a lot of us, but only few take a moment to think about that concept. The first idea of increasing viability is usually buffing the hero in question, or nerfing their counter, but also buffing other heroes that enable this one. But only few people bring up the argument that maybe the maps are the problem. They are poorly designed with little thought put into the sheer variety that the cast of heroes provides. Or were they? In this discussion, we are operating under the assumption that we are supposed to be able to play every hero at any point in time. I mean, the game is marketing this very feature big time. Be who you want, whenever you want. So how come then that we feel punished by taking advantage of that feature? Why is not every hero always viable? Why give us the option to pick them if only a handful of heroes are viable for any given map anyway? It depends on your interpretation of that feature. Being allowed to swap heroes whenever you want indicates to some that you're supposed to be swapping a lot according to the threat in front of you. To others, that means that they have the freedom to play whatever they desire, even if under suboptimal circumstances. And the development team is equally as vague when it comes to what they believe to be right, especially in a competitive environment. Running heroes that are not strong at certain points on the map can be a detriment to your chances for victory. And yet, the act of deliberately picking those heroes and being okay with performing poorly is not a bannable offense, which makes sense. A player's perception of poor performance will always be subjective, and it's also always going to be a little twisted. There are honestly too many arguments to bring up here, but suffice to say that the devs want no part in dictating what we can and cannot play, even when objectively they know which heroes are most viable in relation to the map design. The problem when talking about this is that these objective assessments are based on the assumption that the players in question would always play the maps to their respective advantages, which which could not be more inaccurate. That simply means that players, for one reason or another, are not playing the game optimally, either because they prefer playing in a different fashion, maybe they do it for the surprise effect, or maybe they are plain and simply unaware of these respective advantages and disadvantages. The reason that this is such a huge issue in Overwatch specifically comes down to the fact that the game combines so many different mechanics from so many different genres of gaming, even though they label their characters as tank, DPS, and support, and we go further to separate hitscan and projectile heroes, it lacks any sort of general idea that they can base the map's design around. A good example here would be Dirty Bomb. The way they classify their characters is very cut and dry. Some of them have defensive gadgets like sticky bombs, turrets, or mines, others have access to explosives, and others again have access to airstrike type abilities. The way they dictate the viability of each of these characters through their map's design is actually really smart. You can only call in airstrikes when you're outdoors, which means that by deliberately putting parts of the map under a sort of roof, these characters are suddenly having much less of an impact with those abilities. Tight corridors are favored by grenades and mines, whereas open areas beg for more firepower coming from the sky. Open sightlines favor snipers, and I think you get the idea by now. Everything is very clearly labeled between characters that are effective indoor and outdoor, characters that are effective in a more open environment, and those who benefit from a more close quarters type of design. But to attempt to make every character still usable to a certain extent, they made sure that their maps and game modes play around those different abilities. The maps are split into different parts that only unlock if the attacking team manages to push the objective for each of these respective sectors. And by opening up a whole different area through the completion of those objectives, it almost feels like you're playing on a different map entirely. Where first airstrikes were coming down relentlessly, suddenly you have to rely on hand grenades. Going back to Overwatch, the biggest map relevant difference in the hero pool comes down to the level of mobility each hero provides. And that is kind of dangerous, because in MOBA type games, mobility means power. That means that the maps are often designed around high ground control, which favors a type of hero that is already very strong. Heroes that can overcome verticality, heroes that move swiftly, and heroes that can close distances in a short amount of time. Depending on how much cover is available, the effectiveness of those heroes can potentially be reduced, but mobility still remains to be the leading factor that dictates effectiveness in Overwatch to date. Okay, I know I'm really trying to drive home the point that mobility is extraordinarily important, but we all know that this is not the only thing that dictates hero viability in Overwatch. Really, the point here is that mobility and lack of mobility are being considered in the map design through space and cover, which is not very intuitive to many who look at the game and primarily differentiate heroes by using their respective roles. But to repeat myself here for a second, all of that is assuming that the players are taking advantage of the map design in a way that the designers intended, which is not accurate. But why isn't it? Why can a game like Dirty Bomb so strictly dictate which characters are viable at any given point in time through the map design, but Overwatch cannot? You remember what I talked about earlier when I mentioned the criteria that Dirty Bomb uses when separating their characters, and how Overwatch combines a lot of different mechanics from a variety of video game genres? That is the issue. Because the game is not as cut and dry when it comes to what a specific kind of hero can and cannot do, anticipating how a player is going to use them and how they are going to use them relative to the map design is very difficult. Not to mention the endless amounts of hero combinations that affect their potency even further. Sure, for pro players and to an extent even high ladder players, you can probably quite accurately predict how they are going to use their heroes on these maps. But that's because these players have not only invested their time, but also displayed the skill necessary to understand how characters are behaving relative to each other and relative to the map design. They understand the separation between high mobility and low mobility, and they know how to take advantage of that very fact. But because none of these things are very apparent, not only that, but they are also obscured by the role system currently displayed in the game, getting that idea in the first place is not that easy as a new player. Looking at the different maps in Overwatch, I do not believe that they were made with the intention of allowing every hero to be viable at all times. I am certain that there were specific parts on all these maps where designers intended for players to swap different segments where other heroes are more viable. But I think they underestimated the sheer power of mobility. In a game that keeps launching characters with movement-based abilities because that makes them more fun, older heroes who don't have access to that level of mobility will often be at a disadvantage unless the map distinctively favors them. I mean, just look at most of the heroes that are generally considered not viable. Terios, Torbjorn, Symmetra, and Bastion, all heroes who have no mobility to speak of. You either have that, or you get heroes like Widowmaker, Hanzo, or Doomfist, all heroes who do have mobility but an exponentially higher skill ceiling. Making all heroes equally viable is impossible because they are too different. They don't follow a consistent design philosophy that's common for their respective roles. In Dirty Bomb, every character has access to the same pool of weaponry. Their base kit is balanced around their speed, alias their mobility, and their gadgets, alias their firepower. There's this ratio of mobility to killing power in Dirty Bomb that's always been kept in mind. But in Overwatch, heroes with more mobility will usually be more viable just because this type of game and the map's design dictates that this is a very strong ability. In an early draft for this video, I wanted to conclude that relative to the entire pool of maps, the heroes are probably about equally viable, if you consider how different relevant points on those maps favor different heroes. But that just wasn't accurate. Mobility is exponentially more viable than no mobility due to the sheer importance of high ground play in so many of those maps. In most cases, you can't even contest high ground unless you have the mobility to get there. I mean, sure, we could talk about the sheer size of our player base and how balancing around so many players with so many different skill levels is not easy, and it isn't. But at the end of the day, the designers did that to themselves. They decided to create heroes based on what's interesting and fun, and less based around a clear kind of structure. In a game where supports can dish out more damage than some DPS, the classification of tank, DPS, and healer just is not a very good means to separate them. Too many maps favor high ground play, which high mobility heroes play into. The best way of making underpicked heroes more viable, in my opinion, would be by adding some sort of movement-based ability to their kit. But that just does not always make sense. Imagine if Symmetra had a sprint or if Torbjorn's turret was on wheels. Mobility is just a very powerful type of ability that a lot of those heroes who are considered not viable lack. And beyond that, the difference in skill requirements for some of those heroes is just too different. The way Mercy will always be easy by design, Widowmaker will always be mechanically challenging by design. The base idea of those characters dictates it. So I guess that concludes today's video. Can every hero be made viable? Probably yes, but would it oppose the idea of having every hero feel different and like their own character? Very likely. Would it be an absolutely massive endeavor that either begs for a complete overhaul of the base idea of certain heroes or an entirely new set of maps? I think so. But I'm gonna call it a day, so thanks for listening. Feel free to share your own thoughts on the subject in question down in the comment section below if you want to join the discussion. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Shout out to my sponsor Playvik for making this video possible. You can find the link to their app down in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all next time.